In the previous chapter, we have studied that reproduction has three events: pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. In pre-fertilization, there are two steps. First one is gamete production, then gamete transfer. Gamete production we have discussed, that is microsporogenesis and megasporogenesis. So once pollen grain and egg is formed, then pollen grain has to come in contact with the egg. So the processes by which pollen grain from anther gets transferred to the stigma is called as a pollination. Pollination, there are two types: self-pollination or autogamy, cross-pollination or xenogamy. Usually the open flowers, which are called as a chasmogamous flowers. In these flowers, xenogamy or cross-pollination is common, though sometimes there will be autogamy also. But in closed flowers like clistogamous flowers, in these flowers the possible pollination is a self-pollination or a autogamy. So in self-pollination or autogamy, the pollen grains get transferred from anther to the stigma of a same flower. And another type in the self-pollination is a geitonogamy. In geitonogamy, the pollen grains get transferred to the stigma of another flower on the same plant. That is called as a geitonogamy. In xenogamy, the pollen grain gets transferred from one flower to the another flower on the another plant. So usually plants prefer xenogamy. And the transfer of pollen grains take place through various agents. It may be insect or wind, water, human beings. When human beings carry out the transfer of pollen grains, then it is called artificial method. The flower which gets pollinated by the insects will be usually colorful, will have good fragrance, they have the nectar, pollen grains are big, and insects visit these flowers for not only for the nectar, also for pollen grains. Some of them will eat that, but some insects simply visit the flower but never help in a transfer of pollen grains. They are called as the cheaters. Then wind pollinated flower. In the wind pollinated flowers, the pollen grains will be very dry and flower will not have colorful petals. Then the stigma will be bifid and feathery to catch the pollen grains that come through the wind. The water pollinated flowers, like in Vallisneria, pollen grains have a covering of mucilage, so that while flowing along with the water, the pollen grains do not get decayed because of submerged in water. So these are the agents of pollination. Then many plants prefer the cross pollination